My purpose of today's video came from some viewer emails. The question was, how do I make the outfits using an older machine with only a straight stitch setting? So I picked the oldest machine that I have, which is my great-grandmother's 1904 treadle machine. I used the serial number to research its history. I have not had the machine restored. I only oiled it and replaced the belt. It amazes me that the machine is 118 years old and still works perfectly. Most of my antique items have been handed down from family members, and I will put the approximate date. Stay with me. I will definitely show you how I sewed two outfits, one using the treadle machine and the other using the items that are more current. I store my doll outfits in these old luggage. I have this dress form, and here's an ironing board and antique iron. The sew machine is the Sphinx series made by the Singer Manufacturing Company. And you see the Sphinx. I found the antique Victorian scissors with the machine, along with some fabric shears that I plan to restore and sharpen. I love my grandmother's china sugar cup. This is where I put my little thread clippings. And this is a brush to clean the machine. Some of you will remember the rotary telephone. Here's a few tools that I found with the machine, an awl. And I think these are hooks for shoes. I'm not sure. This is called a puzzle box, and you'll see why as you unfold it. These are the original tools that my grandmother kept safe, and you've seen the pin cushion, the little strawberry, sharpens and cleans your pins and needles. Again, I was surprised that the thread tension was ready to use. Enough background, let's sew. I traced the pattern with a chalk, and I like for my bodice to be just a little bit longer than my pattern indicates. Here's the first tip. Most modern machines have a back stitch button. If your machine does not have this button, you can put your needle down a few centimeters, sew a few stitches, and then turn the garment around and begin your seam. I'm not that great with the treadle action yet, so I was cautious about using pins. As you get to the corner, you leave the needle down, you pivot, and continue sewing, and you'll see my fabric pucker a little. That's a good indication that I need to change my sewing needle. And you'll see me do another manual back stitch at the end of the sleeve. Give yourself a long tail of thread so that the thread will not pop out of the needle. Here's the second tip. If you're using an older machine, and if your machine only has that straight stitch with no zigzag stitch, and you want to give the inside of the garment a finished look, buy a pair of pinking shears. My grandmother experienced the Depression, and she was always motivated to take good care of what she had. Her pinking shears are still in the original box with instructions, and they look brand new. I'm cutting the neckline, up the center back, the sleeves, and then the under the arms. Make a small clip under the arm to reduce tension. Turn it inside out and press it with your iron. And again, I cut mine, maybe a 1/2 inch to 5/8 of an inch longer than my pattern. Now, this dress needs a trim. I looked at what I had in my closet and I had some white trim, but I think I will use kind of an antique color. I think this looks better. I also added a little ribbon. You need to find the center, and I used my iron and pressed kind of a guide, and I'm just sewing down the front on one side of the lace, and then I put the other piece of lace down, and you can hear the clunking of my machine, and I did the little back stitch trick. No big lighter here. I'm blending into the historical moment and using a match to seal the edges of the ribbon. I'm hemming the back and the sleeves. This is what my feet are doing, and then this is what my right hand is doing. For the skirt part, cut a rectangle according to the length that you want. The width of the rectangle will determine the fullness of the skirt. Wider if you want full gathers, and less wide if you just want a few gathers. I've made notches in the rectangle, and I'll match up the notches with the middle of the bodice and then under the side seam of the bodice. I usually like to pin my gathers, but because of the unpredictableness of that treadle, I will just hand baste my gathers. So you see me making a running stitch and pulling it. If you press the gathers with your iron, it will be much easier to sew. And don't forget to remove your basting threads. Rather than cutting little tiny facings for little tiny outfits, you've seen me make this rectangle facing. And once again, I am basting rather than using pins. Carefully clip around the curves. I'm ready to attach a trim to the hem. So I'm turning up about 1/4 of an inch. I found a pretty little iridescent button with a shank. I'm making a chain stitch embroidery thread buttonhole loop, and I attach the embroidery thread to the fabric. Pull up a small amount of the thread to use as the first loop for your chain stitch. Rethread your needle and secure that little loop to your fabric. I hope this has encouraged you to sew even if you don't have the latest sewing equipment, but stay tuned as I show you what I have in my sewing room. First, there's my sergers. The 3-thread hobby lock is old, and the 4-thread Singer is fairly new. There's lots of information online if you're interested. The presser feet set was a Christmas present, and I'm still learning how to use some of those. I thought it was interesting how some of the old notions are very comparable to our new. That'll have to be another video, another time. This box I got at Walmart, and I filled it with supplies that I can easily transfer wherever I am, upstairs, downstairs, in the car, whatever. The embroidery attachment came with my machine. Here's a few of my gadgets and sewing notions that I use frequently. If you are starting at ground zero, a beginning sewer, Dollar Tree has about anything you really need to get you off to a good start, even fabric. I'm using the pillowcase shown here for my next project. I've copied my pattern onto freezer paper, and you see that I've sewn under the arm and down the side. Most of the machines have this back stitch option demonstrated here. My machine even cuts the thread for me, and that is really useful. Once again, I cut the bodice a little bit longer than my pattern shows. This is another one of my favorite gadgets in the sewing room. It's a wool pressing mat, another Christmas present. But look, I'm still using my antique iron. I have to show you this. I made this tailor's hem and sleeve roll when I was 14, and I still use them. If you don't have a serger, some machines have this overlock stitch that's highlighted in this picture. It works the same way. Here's the one on my sewing machine, the overlock stitch. And then this one is the one on my serger. This is the rolled hem presser foot. The yellow fabric shows a better example of what this rolled foot does. The gray fabric was a little bit too ravelly to be a good example. Back to the bodice, I used a zigzag stitch for the finish. Then you turn it one more time and do a top stitch. A mat with a grid is useful when you're cutting. Straight lines are imperative. This is a free motion quilting foot, and I'm going to draw a little picture to use as an applique. I'm using a stabilizer fabric instead of an embroidery hoop, and I'm just going to use my free motion foot and draw a little flower on the fabric. I changed the thread, and I'm adding 2 more colors to my little flower. The buttonhole attachment is a big time saver. You just snap it on and it does the work for you. Some machines come with a button sewing foot, but you have to be really careful and go slow when using this foot. This is not really a how-to video. There's plenty of videos on YouTube showing how to make buttonholes and sewing on buttons, etc. This foot is called a shearing foot, and it makes little tiny gathers, and if you do a lot of sewing, making ruffles and gathers, then this is your favorite foot. I gathered the skirt part and just attached it to the bodice. Thanks so much for watching, and I appreciate your continued support. My patterns are located in my Etsy shop. The link is in the description box.